Have you been thinking recently about upgrading to 120Hz and really don't know where to start with it? What type of equipment is needed? How technical is it? Well, this video's got you covered. I'm going to discuss four main areas for those of you who are considering an upgrade in your gaming setup to push out those higher frame rates. And by the end of this video, you'll be armed with all the right and relevant information for you to understand things like: what is 120Hz mode and 120 FPS? Why is a higher refresh rate important in gaming? How to get, upgrade and unlock 120Hz mode, and finally, what is needed to support higher frame rates at those higher resolutions such as 1440p or 4K. At the end, I'll also be giving my thoughts and opinions on whether the cost versus reward is really worth upgrading for, and hopefully, given my experience on both console and PC with those higher refresh rates, this video will help anyone in two minds whether to take that plunge. I'm Lou, and if you're new here, this channel's all about PlayStation tips, tricks, combined with some guides and gameplay centered around the first-person shooter space, with the aim of helping you get the best out of your gaming experience. Make sure to hit that subscribe button with notifications on so you don't miss out on any future videos. Let's get into it. So what is 120Hz mode and 120 FPS? In gaming, 120Hz refers to the refresh rate of a display, indicating how many times that screen or monitor refreshes its image every single second. A 120Hz display refreshes the image 120 times every second, compared to a standard 60Hz display which does it 60 times per second. The refresh rate and frames per second of your console or PC are closely related, but they are not quite the same thing. Here's how they interact and differ. So the refresh rate determines how many times the screen can refresh the image every second, whereas the FPS refers to how many frames your console generates and pushes out to that monitor or screen every second. So now we know what Hertz and FPS is, we can explore how they actually work together, and there are three things for you to understand with this. If the FPS is lower than your monitor's refresh rate, so for example, if your PS5 produces 60 FPS, but you're using a 120Hz display, the screen refreshes at 120Hz, but only 60 frames are being displayed every second. So this doesn't quite use the full capability of the monitor's display. If your FPS is equaling your refresh rate of the TV or monitor, this is the ideal scenario to be in, although there are factors that affect being able to achieve this, which we'll touch on later on. If your console or PC outputs more FPS than the refresh rate of your monitor, then the excess frames are wasted since the display can only show the maximum amount your monitor is designed for. Hopefully you've followed everything that I've said so far, so this part should make sense. Why is having a higher FPS and display that can support it important in gaming and fast-paced shooters in particular? I want you to imagine that you've got a flipbook animation, you know, one of those ones you used to get as a kid, and you had the same animation in both books, but one of them has 40 pages and the other has 20 pages removed, resulting in the second book having only just 20 pages. Now, I want you to flip animate both books and imagine which one looks smoother and gives you a more accurate reflection of what the animation is about. Of course, it will be the one with more pages in, and this is the exact same idea when it comes to FPS in gaming. This means that you are seeing more information on your screen at 120 FPS compared with 60 FPS. Meaning, of course, you've then got a competitive edge compared with someone playing or outputting 60 FPS. This is particularly useful in fast-paced shooters such as Call of Duty, as it could be the difference between you seeing something or someone or not seeing it at all. Not only do more frames give you smoother gameplay, there are also other advantages such as improved responsiveness, lower input lag and reduced screen tearing. Not all games will run at the FPS they're capable of though. There are multiple factors at play that can either help or hinder the amount of frames your machine can push out. Often, these are things like your graphic settings, either in-game or console-based. Developers not optimizing the game to its full potential. It could mean that you've got outdated hardware, limiting your machine's ability to keep up with the demands of modern gaming. And there's also something called thermal throttling. So if your PC or console is a bit too old and it's beginning to overheat, it may throttle down the performance to protect the actual console or PC from burning out. There are other things as well, but these are just some of the common issues. Now we know the background of what 120Hz is, we need to now look at how to actually get it, how to upgrade to it, and also how to unlock that 120Hz mode but also what hardware is required, because there is a cost to it. Firstly, you'll need to get a monitor or TV that supports a native refresh rate of at least 120Hz. Gaming monitors can be found quite cheap now, allowing you to take advantage of the boost in frame rates for quite a reasonable price. Obviously, there is a big range of products that have different screen sizes, refresh rates, resolutions and display types that have an influence on the price you pay, but on the whole, they can be as affordable as you want them to be. TVs with HDMI 2.1, and we'll be going into HDMI output shortly, will be the more expensive out of the two, however. I will just add that just because you have a monitor that supports the higher refresh rates doesn't mean that all games will be capable of outputting 120Hz. So for example, Call of Duty has been optimised for a while now for up to 120Hz, while games like Battlefield 2042 is still locked at 60Hz. It's always worth checking the game before you purchase it what frame rate it's designed for. So now you've got your TV or monitor capable of the higher refresh rates, it's time now to enable that 120Hz mode on the console settings and in-game where applicable. However, before you can play at 120Hz at any resolution, you will need to make sure that the TV or monitor supports the following HDMI specifications, which we'll move on to now. Since the launch back in 2009-ish of the HDMI cable, there have been various versions produced since then that have slowly upgraded the bandwidth that the cables can push through, which has resulted in you needing to make sure you've got the right cable for the right resolution and the frame rate you want to push out. So firstly, there is HDMI 1.4, and that can deliver you 1080p gaming up to 120Hz. It can deliver 4K up to 30Hz, but does not support 8K. The second version is HDMI 2.0, and this can deliver you 1080p gaming up to 120Hz. It can also deliver 4K up to 60Hz, and again, this does not currently support 8K. If you want those higher resolutions, such as 8K, with the higher frame rates, HDMI 2.1 is the one to look at. HDMI 2.1 can deliver you up to 240Hz at 1080p. It can deliver 4K up to 120Hz, and it can actually deliver 8K resolutions of 60Hz. Another thing to note though is HDMI is backward compatible, so newer cables can work with older devices but won't unlock advanced features for the newer ones. To ensure you can unlock those higher refresh rates, make sure you are purchasing an ultra high speed HDMI cable that is capable of transmitting those higher speeds. So here's my opinion piece on whether you should upgrade or not. And I'm not going to beat around the bush here, but I'm just going to say outright yes. Once you go to 120 frames, you'll never want to go back. Plus, with the availability of reasonably priced gaming monitors now, the higher frame rates are even more accessible than what they used to be, so you can really do it on a budget. So my question to you is, everything you know now, are you going to go out and do it? Let me know in the comments, and let me know what your thoughts are once you actually get those 120 frames. Guys, if you like this video and found it useful, please drop me a like. Also subscribe for more in the future, as there's going to be plenty more videos similar to this coming up. So make sure you've hit that notification bell so you don't miss out on future uploads.